Good morning. My name is Stephanie Shine of Tennessee Shakespeare Company. Welcome back to the Decameron Project. The date, April 10th, 2020. Today's theme, love. On this date, in 1925, F. Scott Fitzgerald novel, The Great Gatsby, was published. After having two incredible bestsellers come before this book, which was his third novel, and those first two books were This Side of Paradise and The Beautiful and the Damned, there were great expectations about The Great Gatsby. He had a huge following, and people are expecting a marvelous read and financial success for all. However, The Great Gatsby met with mixed reviews and poor sales. In fact, there was a famous headline that came out. It was a review of The Great Gatsby that came out in the New York World, and the headline reads, Fitzgerald's latest, a dud. Scott's not going to live to see what happens with his novel, The Great Gatsby. It will be forever a disappointment during his lifetime. And at one point, the second edition is just moldering away in warehouses, unable to be sold. So he will have no idea what will become of this novel. But within it, The Great Gatsby, he explores a bit of his first meeting with his future wife, Zelda Sayre. This is from chapter 6 of The Great Gatsby, and I brought my well-loved version of this book. I think The Great Gatsby is a book we should read often because it reveals itself anew, just like Shakespeare does, each time we meet it. He talked a lot about the past, and I gathered that he wanted to recover something, some idea of himself perhaps that had gone into loving Daisy. His life had been confused and disordered since then, but if he could once return to a certain starting place and go over it all slowly, he could find out what the thing was. One autumn night, 5 years before, they had been walking down the street where the leaves were falling, and they came to a place where there were no trees, and the sidewalk was white with moonlight. They stopped here and turned toward each other. Now it was a cool night with that mysterious excitement in it which comes at the two changes of the year. The quiet lights in the houses were humming out into the darkness, and there was a stir and bustle among the stars. Out of the corner of his eye, Gatsby saw that the blocks of the sidewalk really formed a ladder and mounted to a secret place above the trees. He could climb to it if he climbed alone. And once there, he could suck on the pap of life, gulp down the incomparable milk of wonder. His heart beat faster and faster as Daisy's white face came up to his own. He knew that when he kissed this girl, and forever wed his unutterable visions to her perishable breath, his mind would never romp again like the mind of God. So he waited, listening for a moment longer to the tuning fork that had been struck upon a star. Then he kissed her. At his lips' touch, she blossomed for him like a flower, and the incarnation was complete. I love this passage because it makes me aware, I think, of Scott's choice to love Zelda. In their early courtship, friends of his tried to convince him not to marry Zelda Sayre. She was a wild young thing. And he wrote to one of his friends in February of 1920, I fell in love with her courage, her sincerity, and her flaming self-respect, and it's these things I believe in. But of course, the real reason is that I love her, and that's the beginning and end of everything. Theirs would prove to be a love for the ages, solid in its devotion, though racked by multiple illnesses and crippling financial stress. They spent many years apart. Zelda was often voluntarily committed to a variety of hospitals because she suffered from a variety of different mental illnesses, none that were ever diagnosed. So she would check herself in and out. She had great moments of lucidity, and then when she was not well, she went right back into a facility. But they wrote to each other through the 10 years that they were often apart. When Scott's fourth novel, Tender as the Night, failed, Scott also found solace in their relationship. These letters proved to be a lifeline to both of them. He wrote, "We haven't been happy just once. We've been happy 1,000 times. Forget the past and turn about and swim back home to me." And of course, Zelda was in a hospital and couldn't. And she would respond, "Since we first met, I have loved you with whatever I had to love you with." After their I'm sorry, I just find them so moving. After their last visit together in 1939, after nearly 20 years of marriage, Scott wrote to Zelda, "You are the finest, loveliest, tenderest, and most beautiful person I have ever known, but even that is an understatement." And Zelda wrote to him, "And I love always your fine writing talent, your tolerance and generosity." And this reminds me of Shakespeare's sonnet 116. "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is not shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved." In a beautiful, beautiful compilation of their letters called Dear Scott and Dear Zelda, there's a lovely foreword by their granddaughter that I want to share with you in closing. It's in very little print. "One admirable thing about my grandparents was their ability to forgive infinitely. I believe, as my mother did, that Scott and Zelda stayed in love until the day they died. Perhaps it became an impossible and impractical love, part nostalgia and part hope. Perhaps it was a longing for a reunion of all the best qualities in each other that they had once celebrated and the happy times that they had once shared. But it was a bond that united them forever. On April 3rd of this year, Scott and Zelda would have celebrated their 100th wedding anniversary. Happy anniversary, Scott and Zelda. Happy anniversary. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to the next time.